I found a shell on AliExpress which looks like a Pokédex for the Nintendo DS Lite. Look at that. And one of my favorite things about it, which I actually didn't know it was going to be like this, is it's completely matte finish. Rather than the DS's, which are kind of glossy and stuff like that. So yeah, this is just going to be so sick. I really wish it had like yellow bezels, because I just feel like the inside needs a little splash of yellow, but maybe, no, the buttons, oh wait, you get different options of buttons. This is interesting. You get white ones, blue ones, red ones. I definitely feel like it needs, oh, and there's some black ones as well. I just thought it could do with a little splash of yellow because these buttons were yellow as well. I suppose you could buy those separately, but I don't have those. If you haven't done any work on a Nintendo console before, I would not advise starting with the DS Lite. It's just so complicated. There's obviously the hinge, so you've got to get a ribbon cable through it, and there's also lots of ribbon cables and ribbon cable connectors. There's 2 Phillips screws underneath the little rubber covers at the top. I'm gonna try and make this as in-depth as possible for those of you who actually would like to do this yourself, because I'm sure there's a lot of people, and a DS Lite shell swap is quite fun. It's certainly very rewarding. It was in fact the first thing that I ever did as a kid, or at least the first mod that I ever did. I put a transparent shell on the DS Lite, but I broke the power button, the power slider, and I also think I broke the top screen as well because there was so much to do. So yeah, there's a little battery cover there. That's a Phillips screw as well. And then you're going to need to swap over to a tri-wing bit. It needs to be quite a small one. We can take the battery out as well. Oh, actually, there's another Phillips screw in there, but we'll get to that one in a second. And there's a few tri-wing screws around the outside. So keep these separate, but obviously these are the only tri-wing screws on the device. And that was always a problem that I had as a kid as well, because I didn't have eBay. I was always after a tri-wing screwdriver, and no shops sold it as a standard thing because it was pretty much only used by Nintendo, and modding wasn't a massive thing at that stage. So there's one more tri-wing screw, by the way, which is in the cartridge slot just at the top. I'm gonna put the Phillips screwdriver bit back in and undo this final Phillips screw that's just here. Next thing, the little cartridge port connector cover thing needs to come off, and then we can lift off the back. Now, I always just put my fingernail in here because there's a tiny little clip that holds the shell down. So if you start with that bit first and then come over to the top, and you can just lift off the back like that. It's fairly straightforward. So there's 2 Phillips screws on the motherboard, one here and one here. We can go ahead and remove those. As DS's go, this one is the easiest one to take apart. These screws are the same size as the one that was here, so you could put those together, but I'm just going to keep all of mine completely separately, and I will remember what order they go back in. We're going to take off the shoulder buttons now. If you want to remember that you're alive, put your fingers here and lift up, and the springs will slap your fingers. It's like a little electric shock. It's quite nice. And then there's some stuff to do around here. So the first thing we're going to do is just lift off this little cable. And this is sort of, I think this is the antenna. Come on. There we go. So that is now off. And then, this is one of the most annoying parts, and I remember this as a kid as well. It's such a pain to get this back through. It's not so bad to pull it out, but getting it back through is awful. But yeah, you need to just like feed this cable underneath the cartridge slot, and it needs to be flat because otherwise it doesn't go through. And then you can pull it out the other side like so. Might be easier to actually just remove the antenna, which can be achieved by pulling it up like that. And then we can get to this, which is the little ribbon cable connector, and you just sort of flick it up like that, and then you can get your ribbon cable out. So it's all fairly straightforward so far. So the next thing we're going to do is take out the motherboard. Now for this you have to be quite careful. There is a ribbon cable here and one here as well. My piece of advice for this would be to press in on the screen and hinge it down towards the top of the shell. But there's also like a couple of small little screw posts that you've got to lift the motherboard over. So lift it up and out and make sure that you're not putting any pressure on that ribbon cable over there. Hopefully that made sense. Now we're going to get a little tool It comes with one, this little pry tool, if you want to use that one. I'm going to use an iFixit one just because they're a little bit bigger and a little bit easier to use. And this is just going to go right under here and lift up this little black door, if you want to call it that, like the little latch for the ribbon cable connector. So you can now take that out. The other thing that we need to unhook as well is this white connector. This one might be for the microphone. I think that's what that is there. So there's actually enough room for me to just get that off with my nails. This is where things get a little bit more complicated, and I don't like this bit very much, but I have done it so many times now that I feel fairly confident. And if you're following along, trust me, you're in good hands. We're going to do this. So there's 2 screws here. We're going to remove both of those, and I absolutely love the design of the DS Lite. And yes, some of the hinges have started to break nowadays. But you have to think the amount of use these things got, and they weren't that expensive considering. So there's 2 long Phillips screws there. We can set those aside. They're very different to any other screw in the device. And then we can just gently, because there's ribbon cables going through here, we can gently take this off. So you kind of just slide it out like that. And that is that little hinge piece out. And there's actually a small hinge in there that we're also going to need to take out because we're going to need to transfer that over. So for this next bit, you need to get these little cables out of the way slightly. So I think they go through the center of the ribbon like that. So that is actually going to be probably the best position for them to be in, just over here, making sure that they're on the inside. And then what we're going to do is slowly push the shell out. So hopefully you can see I'm just sliding it out, and we're going to feed the ribbon cable through that little slit in the shell. And it is a little bit tricky, but once you get it just started, it makes a lot of sense. You can see now it's in that little slit. The black shell is really not making this too easy for us to see, but it's going to be fine. And I think maybe you might even need to sort of like push the nose of it down first in to the slit, and then you can just like very gently pull the rest of it through. Hopefully that made sense. It will be a lot easier to see on the red shell when it goes through. These small little covers for the screw posts have to come up in order to expose the screws underneath. And the best way that I find to do this is get a very, very fine flathead screwdriver. There we go. There's a bit of a knack to it. It is quite difficult, but there we have it. The rubber is still entirely intact, and the shell has no damage on it. So I'm just going to repeat that now for the other 3. And we can now undo all of these screws. Now, a couple of things we need to do before we can take this apart is pull out the hinge, which can just be literally done with your nails or some tweezers. Maybe, oh, there we go. There's the hinge. We can set that aside. And then also we need to take out this little hinge ribbon cable cover thing. The best way to do this is to wrap the ribbon cable up and just put it inside of that little piece of metal. It's quite tricky, but it's doable. It's very doable. As you can see, I've just done it. There we go. I just got some tweezers on there, some little flat ones. It usually comes out with your fingers, but that one was a little bit stubborn. But there we go. We can now slide that all the way off. And then we can just slide the shell up like that. And then the back will just very nicely come off. Absolutely no drama. Beautiful. So we're now going to just swap all of the parts over. Obviously, we need to take the screen out, which is just going to be done by very gently sort of pushing in on the screen and pulling it away from the shell, like that. Now start up in this corner, and you'll see why in just a second, because we have to pull the ribbon cable through the shell. It's not in the clear yet, as you can see. There we go. So we can just now feed that through. making sure that it's not getting caught. And then we can also lift up the microphone. There's quite a lot of little bits to do all at the same time, but you just need to think about it logically. Everything needs to move together, otherwise you might end up ripping something. So the microphone's going to come out now, and then we can free that from the little slots that it's pressed into, so now that's moving freely. So we're just going to pull everything through together. There we go. And then we can lift up this, which I think is the antenna. And there we have it. Everything has come out in one. Fairly complex stuff, but not too bad. Just got to be confident and make sure that you're paying a lot of attention to the ribbon cable. These can snag a little bit as long as they're not snagging on the ribbon cable. That's your most delicate point. But if you break it, whilst you're doing all of this, you can just put a new one in, and they're only about £15, I think, to buy a new screen. I'll leave a link to one of those as well in the description if you break yours. Alrighty, now we're going to have to do everything in reverse. So what we're going to do is fold the ribbon around like that, wrap it all up. We're going to keep all of these other little cables together because why not? Put those through first. We can pull those through, and then we can come with the ribbon. There we go. And then what I also recommend doing at this stage, just make sure that that antenna is sitting well out of the way, is getting that little metal piece that you took off, and before you pull the ribbon all the way through, slot it into the shell. There we go. And then we can pull everything through. And there we have it. Simples. Right, now we need to get this antenna sat down properly. So that's going to come around like that. Speaker can go down. And then the little antenna. Boom. So let's push that microphone in first, and then let's put this speaker in over here. And now all of the little wires for the speaker and the antenna and everything else all get sort of slot down into its little place. So this one I think just runs in between the screen and this tape, but the microphone, that actually has a little place for it to slot down into. I'll show you in a second. There and there, you can just push the wire into there, tuck the little speaker wires in. So there we go. All of the speaker wires are nice and tucked away. The microphone is in. The speakers are set down, as is the antenna. There's a couple of things we just need to make sure we're doing. There's a little rubber kind of gasket thing here, which is actually to take a little bit of shock off of the speakers to stop them from like vibrating too much. I can already see that this one is in, but it looks like it's fallen out of this one. So if you don't have those in, it will make like a little bit of a buzz. So we can go ahead and set that back down like that. And since this DS is in such good condition, as is the speakers, but you could take a little Q-tip and just clean off that. I'll show you what I mean here, just because you might want to do it. So there you go. You can just give it a nice little clean. There's holes in the shell, so some dust might get through, but this one's pretty good. There we go. Alright, so that is the top now done. So we can now slide this front piece or back piece back onto the shell. Make sure that everything is clicked down because there's little clips that are gonna guide everything in. So you want to make sure that they're all nice and flush all along the sides. That's the most important thing. These sides need to be nice and flush, and then you can push upwards. Little bit tricky. There we go. It suddenly just all went there. Perfect. I am really, really happy with that. That looks absolutely brilliant. Okay, so let's put these screws back in, and we can put the rubber covers in at the end. So it's these 4 little screws that we took out earlier, the tiny little Phillips ones. There's all the screws back in. And that is really looking very, very nice indeed. So, the one thing that I have noticed is that this little metal piece is pushing quite far into the shell. And I just want to make sure that we're not supposed to use their one if it's a bit longer. Look at that. Okay, that's interesting. The one that they've sent in their little bag is actually longer. That would have been really annoying. So take that one out, and then in here is a slightly longer one. And if you weren't using this one, this slightly longer one here, what would happen is the hinge would be far more fragile, and the screen might even pop out, because this is basically what holds that half of the hinge on, and it obviously protects the ribbon cable too. So wrap all of those up and feed it all through. There we go. Yeah, that sticks out much, much more. So that's a big thing to consider. Now we can go in with the hinge. There we go. That has gone in. Right, so we're now going to connect this bottom half again. So we can put the two little wires through for the antenna and the microphone and pull them out the other side. And then we're going to feed them all the way through. And then we need to put that ribbon back through. So just be really, really gentle with this. There we go. Well, I don't know if you saw what just happened there, but basically I put this little end in first, and then this just came through kind of naturally. And then once that's done, making sure that the ribbon is well out of the way, you can slide it through. There should be absolutely no pressure on that whatsoever. And there it is. The ribbon is through, the wires are through, that's sticking out ready to go. The only thing keeping this from just locking into place now is the little hinge cover, which is in the bag here, so we can take that out. Now there's a light tube in the bag with the parts, so we'll just use that. We can just slide that in. So there is actually like a specific way that I think the light tube goes in, according to at least the other one. There's more of a slope on one side, and that goes facing away. If you were looking at like the bottom, that's going to be going away from you. With the slot here, that slope points that way. Hopefully that helps. I don't know. Right, so we now need to figure out why this isn't going over. Oh, there we go. It just needed a good push. Okay, so let's pop one of the screws back in for that hinge, and then see if the hinge is opening and closing as it should. Because I don't know if that hinge has a specific way that it can go on. So let's have a little look here. Oh yeah, that's okay. There we go. There we go. Oh yeah, this is good. This is absolutely great. We've got the whole sort of most delicate, scary, fragile part done. Right, let's put the buttons in. So I'm going to be using the red ones. I just think that's going to look pretty sweet. You could use the blue ones as well. There's also white ones. In fact, do I want to use white ones? So I'm going to have red A and B, red D-pad, red start and select, and blue X and Y. I think that's going to look sweet. So let's get that X in like that. Do I like that? They seem to differ in what used what over the years, but it actually looks like it's mainly black or white. So now I'm thinking maybe I want to just stick with the black ones. I actually think that could be better. And you know what? The other thing as well, my DS that I'm using for this actually has black buttons, and the DS, as I said, is in really good condition. And the original DS, has like little white accents inside the buttons, and they don't do that on the aftermarket ones. So I think for quality, I'm going to use the original buttons. Let's just have a quick look how that looks. I've got all the buttons in. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, 100%. That looks way, 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 way better. Yup, I'm 100% doing that. Now, since I'm reusing the rubber membranes, I'm going to take a small little bit of isopropyl alcohol, and a Q-tip or a cotton bud. And I'm just going to give those a little wipe. And we can give the motherboard a little clean as well on the buttons, just to make sure that they are going to be really nice and reliable. Perfect. And then we could also just drop a bit into the power switch as well, just to give that a little clean. And also the volume slider. What's the harm, huh? What's the harm? We need to remove this little bezel part, which is a little bit annoying. I didn't want to do that, but yeah, it can't go on otherwise. So let's go ahead and very, very, very gently remove that. And I suppose while we're here, we can take that screen protector off that they have very kindly had on there for all these years. Thank you for your service. And there's an absolutely mint condition screen under there, but I'm just going to give it a wipe because there's bits of residue from the screen protector and the bezel. Okay, it's looking good, so we can just drop this in like that. Hopefully the screen's gonna go in nice and easily. There we go, it has, I can feel it. Right, now we need to work out what goes on with all of these little wires. I've zoomed the camera in here just so that we can actually take a look at what's going on. So all of these need to come through, as does that little digitizer ribbon cable, and then it all sits down nicely. The white one gets connected first, just like that. We're going to lift up this little digitizer connector and just slide that in. There you go. Right, straighten this wire up as much as you can and then feed it underneath. Will we get it first try? Let's see. No, it's gonna be horrible. Honestly, it takes a lot of patience, and when you're coming to the end of your shell swap, you just want this bit to just go seamlessly. Oh, it came through. Happy days. There we go. Right, and then we can press that down into place. There we go. So I think what actually might be the best thing to do is to push this little black wire on top of the white one underneath there. I think that's probably where it's going to sit the best, but it is going to want to come out. So the only thing I can suggest to remedy that is we put the shoulder button in, but we can't do that yet because we need to connect up that top screen. So that is the next job, but we know where everything's supposed to go now. So let's go ahead and get that top connector in. I'm just going to give it a quick clean with some isopropyl alcohol because I've had my grubby, greasy fingers all over it. And we need to make sure that that's going to make a good connection. So we can give it a good little wipe. There we go. Sometimes it just is a bit tricky, but it is in now. And then we can get this little latch down. Go on. There we go. Right, that's all in. So with that all now in, it's time to put the two Phillips screws back into the motherboard. And one of the things that we're going to do before going any further, and obviously the only stuff that we have left is to swap all of the internal gubbins over into the bottom shell. But we can wait and do that in just a second. What I actually want to do first is focus the camera. There we go. And then I want to just hold the battery up to here and check that it still turns on, because that's going to be a big problem if it's not. So let's get this open. There we go. And let's now turn it on. And it's not turning on yet. And it's not turning on yet still either. Right, what's going on? Maybe the battery's dead. Let me get another battery. Oh, there we go. That's coming on. Hey! Right, so let's set that to the side. And we can now think about transferring all of this stuff over to the new one. So, let's do that. Let's just do that. I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm just going to do it. There's just a whole bunch of screws. Just undo all of those. They're all gold. Wait a minute. it's come with a new one. Okay, we're using that. We're using that. That's way better. That's way better. Let's use that. And look at the red stylus as well. Oh, this is fun. Okay. So we'll just use the screws then from the OG one. So it looks like this little piece here goes in first. Whatever in the world that is for, I cannot tell you. I have absolutely no idea, but it's there, and we're going to put it in. And then this little stylus sheath, if you want to call it that. You can call it that if you want. I don't really mind. That goes over the top like that. And something is going wrong. Oh, it goes under a little tab. Never saw that before. And that's not how it is on here. So Extreme Rate are just making things up at this point, but we love that. Let's undo this screw, check that everything is out, which it is, and then we can transfer all of these little screws over to the stylus sheath, which we're definitely going to call it that now forever. I want everyone to call it the stylus sheath. In fact, if you are watching this video at this moment in time and you know that I am telling you because you've heard it, because you're watching, comment down below with the words stylus sheath and I will heart it. Screws in. Like that. This little sticky metal thing, which is just right here on this little cartridge slot. So we're going to just put that on as well, because I suppose it needs it for something. There we go. So that's in. Absolutely no idea what that's for. Oh, it's for the volume. Or no, it's not. No, I've got no idea what that's for. It just seems to be there. But I've actually stuck it in slightly the wrong place. There we go. That's better. Okay. Cool. Again, no idea what that's for. So there is another thing that we need to take out, and it looks as though we need to use Extreme Rates one as well, is this very small little screw thread part, which is for the battery cover. So let's go ahead and slide that in. It just goes right down there. So let's slide that in. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to take the power slider and push that in. Go in with the sort of the bottom first, and it presses into the sort of rails for it. So I'm going to use the original Nintendo stuff, just because. Why not? So there's a little spring and a little bar, and it's quite fiddly, but you get the hang of it. And then we can just slide that over and lock it into place. I appreciate I'm using words and then people might not be able to see what I'm doing, but there's a spring that has to lock into the little two plastic bits sticking out. These springs as well are like actually specific to the direction that they're going in. So there we go. Get the little bar and shove it through like that. Okay. Can we all see that, hopefully? And then we can push it down, and then just using some tweezers or your finger, you can lock that little metal spring round. And there we go, clicky and springy. Press it all in, and oh my goodness. Has that all just worked? Has that all just gone in? Look at that, power slider works, volume slider works. There's nothing opened. We will talk about this in a second. I'm curious to know what that is, what's going on there. But now we can screw everything together. So we're going to start with this silver Phillips screw, this little silver small Phillips screw. That's going to go in the top right. And then the next ones are two golden Phillips screws, and they're going to go up here like this. One in there. And then the other one is going to go in here. Like that. Not too tight, but just all the way in, you know? But it is going into plastic, so just be careful. And then we have our little black tri-wing screw. That's going to go in the top here, where the cartridge Goes in. And then finally, we've got 3 more tri-wing screws. 1 in there, 1 in there, and then 1 in this little corner, right down there. That is just like not sitting flush, and there's absolutely no reason for that because everything is seamless and closed, and there's nothing that could even get caught over here, and it's all flat and flush. So I don't know why it's doing that. That is a massive letdown. I've got no idea why it's doing that. Nothing's in the way, everything's all fine. It looks as though the plastic's just bent on my one. Oh, I'm actually quite gutted about that. That sucks. That's such a shame. I've got no idea why it's doing that. Okay, well, we'll move. We'll digress. Let's give the screens a little wipe. I'm really not sure why that is, though. That does suck. I really wanted that to just be a nice seamless close. That's one of the nicest things on the DS Lite, is the way that it all just seamlessly closes like that. Ah, you can almost see, maybe it is actually slightly bowed. Yeah, I can see it to my naked eye that there is a little curve in there where that kicks up, which is stopping it from closing. So there's a little bag of goodies in here as well. Let's take all of those out. There is the screw covers for the back, and then there's the little ones for the top. It's quite nice that they've given you double of everything. So there's also these little ones as well, which go into the side of the shell here. Right, let's carry on. There's some little screw covers for the back. These also act as the feet, so that when it sits down on a surface, it's sort of got a little bit of grip. So there we go, 1 in like that. And these are all nice little details, and it's a really rewarding thing to be placing those in. But it'd be far more rewarding if I knew that it was worth doing. But now I'm just sad. Oh, I'm so sad. Oh, okay. Well, in order to make me feel better about that, I'll just sell this on eBay, and 100% of the money will go to charity. That'll. I can never unsee that. I'm sorry, but if anybody of you can deal with that, then the money's going to go to a good cause. It will start at 99p. Right, let's put this back piece on, the little battery cover. Right, well, I can't actually find Extreme Rates one, so we're just going to use the one from Nintendo. So there's a tiny little clip on there. This tiny little clip here. Be careful not to lose it as you pry that off. But that's the screw that we want. So now we can poke that into there and get the little clip back on. There we go. There we go. And then give all of the fingerprints a wipe off. There is actually a little serial number which comes with it that is this sort of fancy rainbow colour. There we go. Look at that. Absolutely excellent. Oh, I am really, really pleased with it, but I am sad about that. I just have no idea why that is. Red stylus, in it goes. And the thing is, the quality of the shell is quite nice as well. I have put the battery in that's dead. I'll put that on charge quickly before we wrap up. So there isn't a bezel that goes on the bottom screen, which I suppose is fine. Still works because the top screen's black, but if you wanted, you could have stuck down that red included bezel there. This is the black one from mine. I think I would have preferred if it was still black. I suppose you could stick that down, but then the screen feels like quite far down. I don't know. Does that work? Interestingly, the black bezel from the bottom screen fits perfectly on top of their like molded one, and I think I prefer that. So I'll leave that in there, and whoever buys this on eBay can just very easily take that off if they don't want it. But I think it looks a little bit more even having that black bit in there. The only bit I don't like is the fact that there's now like a little additional red layer underneath. But yeah, top down view, it looks better. You can just peel it off if you don't want it. The only final little thing to do is just swap over the cartridge stuff. There we go. And then slide it in. It's come out. Okay, there we go. That is in. And then the screw goes back in as well. There we go. In it goes. Boom. Oh, that is so cool. So cool. Right, let me put it on charge and we can wrap up this video. And there it is. It's done. This video might be 35 minutes long so far, but this has actually taken me about 2 hours probably. But it is quite an enjoyable 2 hours. You know, stop halfway through, make a bit of lunch, relax, and just enjoy the process. I am really quite upset about this. I have absolutely no idea why that is, but looking down at the shell, it just doesn't close properly, and that's probably just going to be a result of aftermarket shells. If you look here at an actual official Nintendo one, you can see that it's just a nice seamless edge. So that's probably just what's going to happen, but the trade-off is your DS now looks like a Pokédex, and it works absolutely perfectly. All of the buttons press perfectly fine. You know, I used all of the original Nintendo buttons and membranes, so everything does work fine. And the screen is perfectly calibrated. But anybody who buys this, once they set it up, I would suggest just calibrating that screen again in the settings. There we have it, the Pokédex DS. Thanks very much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye!